Hi, I'm Peter Kalmström of Kalmström.com Business Solutions. In this demonstration, I'm just going to do an overview of a solution that I'll go through in a series of demonstrations after. It's going to be a way to automate taking meeting notes and handling meetings in general. And I'm going to make that an end-to-end solution that I hope will be representative, and maybe you can use it straight out of the box, or maybe it will give you some understanding on how to use some SharePoint methodologies. The steps I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the information strategy for the solution, what needs to be stored and how, etc. Then I'm going to look at the content type. I'm actually going to have two content types for this solution, and then I'm going to look at how to do a search implementation of this so you can easily find it. So those are the three steps I'm going to go through in my forthcoming demonstrations. So let's look at the information strategy first. First, we need to know what to store, of course, and I'm going to go through that in some details. Then I'll talk about mandatory fields. In general, you want to keep the number of mandatory fields to a minimum because it takes extra time to fill in mandatory fields. And if you can automate the filling out of those fields, that's a good thing. Of course, if you can set defaults, that makes sense. That's a good thing too. But don't put up too many mandatory fields. Of course, mandatory fields do improve your data, but they make it harder for people to work in your system. So it's a bit of a minefield there. I've seen solutions with 18 mandatory fields for each document upload. And of course, that's a real pain for everybody working with it. You get wonderful data, wonderful discoverability, but it's just too much, so people won't work with it. Then discoverability, how do you find the information, in this case the meeting notes? So we're going to do some search implementations for that. Then permissions is always an interesting thing. Some departments probably have meeting notes that should be visible for the entire organization. Other meeting notes could be very secretive. So I'm going to build a solution that works for all those scenarios, so that you can have very strict permissions or very open permissions, but still have one solution. So I'm going to build one solution with distributed permissions handling. And that means that each site collection can have set their own permissions on their site collection or on the specific list involved. Then I could potentially talk about retention. I don't have a good story for that, but how long are the documents or the meeting notes going to be stored? That is certainly something that you should keep in mind when you're building a solution too. Are they just going to be kept for eternity, or do you want them to eventually die out? I'll show you a few clicks on how you can set up those retention stages in a list or library. Then of course the whole question of whether you should store your information in a list or a library. I usually prefer lists. I think they're much more powerful, but a lot of people, come from the world of documents, and a meeting note should, of course, be a document because it needs to be printed, it needs to be verified or whatever. If you want it to be printed, then in general, a library is better and working with files. But in this case, I'm going to go with a list because I like that, and I think you can store all the information. And maybe it will show you some tips on how to work with that. What to store? In my solution here, I'm going to store the title, of course. Everything in SharePoint has a title, and it's usually a rather bad idea to try to remove the title or hide the title. Then we're going to have some free text notes. We're going to have comments, which is also multiple lines, but I'm going to have append changes on that. Then we're going to have a shareman for each meeting, and that can be a people. In this case, I'm going to disable the or group. Internal attendees is going to be a people or group field with the ability to select multiple people. And the external attendees, if there are any, I can have multiple lines of that. And then I'm going to set up a department field, which is going to be a managed metadata, which can be shared across the organization. And then I'm going to do action points. And that, of course, could also be a multiple lines, but I'm going to go with another task list. So I'm going to task the person taking the notes in each meeting with creating a new task list, and then I'm going to hyperlink to that task list. I think that would be an interesting way of doing it. That's going to be my solution. Then the content types that are going to be created is going to be two of them. It's going to be a meeting list content type, and there's going to be an action point list. Both of those are going to be published in the content type hub, which is something you might not have worked with before, but it's really powerful. and it also increases discoverability in your enterprise scenario. Otherwise, you have to create the content types in every site collection, and you really don't want to do that. So creating the content types in the content type hub is important. I'm going to publish those in the content type hub, and then I'm going to wait for a while until it's actually published, and then I'm going to create the lists in the team sites that I have for each department. So that I will show you. And finally, I'm going to do the discoverability bits here. I'm going to get an overview page that I'm just going to show you how to make that. Maybe on the HQ site, you want to have a list of all the meetings that are occurring across the organization. And then I'm going to do a search vertical for meetings. And then once you get started with having multiple tasks list, then a tasks assigned to me page or a web part is very important. So I'm going to show you how to make one of those too. So that's going to be my demonstration series. Thank you for watching.